Okay, good evening. It's what's it, Bank Holiday Monday evening. I'm just going to whiz through my notes so I know what I've got. Well, I know what I've got, but I know what to do. Right, so we've got Jonathan's Fender American Professional Strat, which has Lollar single coils on here. So we've got a hot Texas there and a 64, I think it's called the 64 hot or something set, but I'm looking forward to hearing those. Haven't had a chance to play it much yet, or not plugged in anyway. Now we've got high E, the nylon's gone up here on the high E, so we'll get a spare out for that. In fact, let's get that out now, or we think we'll get a spare. One of a million throwaway tuners, frankly. Okay, so we're going to change the nut, we're going to do a setup, we're going to keep the string tree, we're going to precision level the frets, get the action as low as it can be. We're going to investigate whether the neck is at the right angle or could be made a bit simpler. Jonathan's got a full-size shim in here, which kind of makes a solid joint, but it annoys him the way it looks. So we've also got a big ding here. Look at this. Now, wowee! How do you get that? That's quite spectacular. Anyway, yeah. So that's what we're going to do, and set the tremolo in the end to down only. It's got a bit of backward movement at the moment, which we don't really want. So it's a Fender. It's beautiful. It's nice in every other way, but obviously I do get scared by the sight of its gloss maple finish. Now it has been made in the, I wonder if I can get the light to tell you this. It's been made in the traditional American Fender way, and you can see that the light sort of breaks up as it goes past each fret. So there's a kind of let's have a look. You can't see the evidence of it, but it looks like it's it looks like it's been sprayed up the sides and then cleared off. I think that's what's been done. It has that look about it, which makes it a pain for refretting. That little shiny, how to describe what it is, those little shiny slivers. When you have a fingerboard that's sprayed and sanded as one flat surface, you don't get this rising and falling effect, this carpet effect. So on some guitars that's perfectly fine just for setup, it won't cause any troubles. It really gets difficult when it comes to doing refrets, as I found out in the past. So the aim of this then is to examine what's going on with the neck shim, and whether it actually needs one or not. But I think we'll just start with, what will we start with? Well, I think we should start by taking the shim out and seeing what we've got as a default action without it. So okay, what else we need as I zoom out? Let's tell you what else I've got in my notes. I've got I'm filthy because I've just tied it up in here from, well, I've just been doing sawdusty woodwork and tidying up and getting covered. So keep the nut. Oh, there's some fret sprout just along the edges. Oh no, hang on a minute, that's on the telly, but that's okay. Let's have a look. So it's not that. We're going to the jack is loose on the telly. That's at home. Okay, so we're going to keep the string tree. We're going to see if the neck needs shimming or not. High E spacer. Replace it. The truss rod is stiff, but we'll see what it needs and doesn't need, and then we'll have a listen at the end to the Lollars. So first things first, let's put one of these on, capo on to begin with. and let us undo the slack the strings off. The other way. So this should be a, no, I keep saying this should be a straightforward setup, just really about finessing what we've got here. The alignment and everything is okay, there's nothing wrong with that, nothing needs dealing with there. So let's see, okay, let's take the trimmer arm out for a second. Come straight up, please. Stiff. It's like that on the custom shops as well, I seem to recall. Frighteningly stiff. Now this, interesting, this has the micro tilt, and I know that Jonathan said for one reason or another it didn't feel right to him. Now, it's a very subjective thing, isn't it? This, when we've got a nice quality American made Fender, and we start making adjustments to it at home, and it doesn't end up feeling quite right. And so he's stopped with that, and then gone back to using a wooden shim, which felt better. I can't describe exactly what he didn't like about the micro tilt feel, but it had a feel that he didn't like. It's suffice to say. Okay, so we've got a StewMac style 0.25 degree kick up at the back end. I think we're flat on here, that should be. Let's have a look and see how it all sits, because obviously if I can make it play well, if it goes and plays correctly with without a shim, then ideally we'd have it like that. Again, I can't know until I've put it back this way without the shim in place. I can't know the conditions or the challenge that Jonathan faced. So the first thing I noticed was the screws were not on very tight, which is fine, but they weren't over tight. Not that that's particularly anything to do with it, but just an observation really. So what we expect to get now is, as we tighten the neck back up, we've taken the shim away, so we expect the fingerboard to fall away now from the strings a bit. Okay, and we'll get to see whether we've got how much short of adjustment room, and that will tell me what kind of shim I need to put in. And I would use a brass shim, single piece thing, but it wouldn't need to have the front edge shim, which looks a little bit ugly. Okay, what I'm also going to do at this point is I'm going to take off, no, I'm not going to take off the back because it's already off. I'm going to get my screwdriver and I'm going to tighten in the claw screws for a minute, because it needs to be a little tighter down on the deck to rule out any movement. When we put it into tune, we'll see what it does. Now I can see these have been levelled somewhere in the past, quite a lot possibly. I don't know whether, yeah, I can see the finishes up the side here. I'll show you this right now. So this is the mark of the finishing approach. See if I can find a spot where it's really visible. It was so visible a minute ago. This one we need to look at. Sorry, I don't know if you can. Yeah, you can see. So the stuff would be, I don't know if you can see it, it's all the way along there, and you can see it. There you go, look, see it cracking off there. That's all the finish that's sprayed up and over the frets. And you know, they do some polishing before it leaves the factory, which gets off the stuff over the top, but it leaves everything else in place. And it isn't so bad on this one, but on some more darker, more amber colours, it can look like a horrible blotchy mess. Let's just make sure this isn't going anywhere. No, it's flat. So I'm just going to put this in, tune this up and see what we've got. It's interesting, the end fills. The end fills on these frets have it's been sprayed over, so it's been incorporated into the lacquer finish, or not lacquer, poly. But there's some corrosion grown underneath because it's copper, silver, or copper, nickel, silver, copper based. So what you can probably see in this light, if I hold on to this guitar, maybe it's not the best light in the world. From here I can see it much better actually, but now if you can see down there, can you see the green? Look at that green. So it's covered by poly, so they've fretted the bare wood, sprayed over the whole thing, neck and top, and over the years a bit of corrosion has started, or tarnishing has started with the copper in this material, which then kind of blooms this green colour, and it's, as you can see here, it's underneath the poly finish, so it either has to stay there or you have to take off the finish down the side, scrape it off, which I won't bother doing. Doesn't bother me that much, but that's what you need to do. You have to basically sand it away. Okay, what was I looking for? Oh yes, so overall I'm looking for, first of all, the action's gone higher now, obviously. The what's that thing called? You know, relief is it's not too great, it's not too little, and now the action at this far end here is going to be, let me get my little screwdriver thing. The action at the last fret end, as I would call it, it's too high on the first fret, but let's just have a quick judge down here. So we're at about 2.5 mils. So this is the US one. Let's get the right hex thingy, screwdriver. So let's see what this goes down to at its best. Now of course, one of the good things about having these quite tall, having the saddle standing up tall, is that you don't get the saddle grub screws sticking in your hand. So I tend to err on the side of tall rather than short, because this is much more comfortable, but we still want to get the right action, and it's actually at the right action right now. But we'll take all these down. I'll do this by eye for a minute. We're still going to get a bit of this standing up. Okay, so just having a feel of this, if we go down to our 150, which is about right, and we go down to our 125. So taking it down here leaves me with the right action, and with a tiny bit more of the screws showing. So in a way, my decision as yours was, I expect, Jonathan, was I would rather that these were standing a little higher so that those grub screws sat down, and the way to get them to stand a bit higher is to lift up the neck a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get me a piece of copper. No, that's not the stuff I'm talking about. Brass is the stuff I'm talking about. And as my normal thing is to make a brass shim to go in the back of the heel. So I'm going to try and make a straight line first. Thank you. Now, some people freak out at the thought of a single piece of brass like this. I think some feel that it's that some are worried that it creates an air gap, which either saps tone, some people think, or other people think that what else do they think it does? Some people think that it causes, or it encourages the heel to bend, which I have never observed in my time, but I've only been doing this 9 or 10 years, so it's a possibility that it could do such a thing, but I've not seen it. If it were true that it did that, then it would do it with the Fender's micro tilt device. So, some might say, well, that's why Fender stopped doing the micro tilt. We don't know the answer to that, but it's true enough they don't do it. But this is a very thin, it's a 0.25 millimeter shim, and it stops you having the guitar neck lifted up at the front of the pocket, visibly lifted, which never looks fantastic. And the 0.25, in my experience, always is just about the only shim I ever need. And I know from experience it will raise this up exactly where I'd want it. And in fact, even though the shim that Jonathan had in there before referred only to degrees, this 0.25 will probably be identical. The 0.25 of a mil will probably add up to the same as the degree lift. Right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take the neck off again. I'm going to, when I've done it, I'm going to put in the shim in the back of the pocket. And we'll put it back together again. And then, once we get this shimmed, then I will sort the nut out. Now here's me forgetting to, you know what I did, don't you? I forgot to undo the strings. Silly me. So I'm just going to hold this in place for a minute while I take the slack. Give it some slack. You hear that little ping? That's the nut catching the strings, so good reason for changing it as well, or we'll take care of that in changing it. Okay. I always like to keep these in the position that they came out. Not that it will do any harm either way, but just in case one was bent and or the hole that it's in has a similar sort of kink to it. Highly unlikely. Okay, so this, I know that Jonathan isn't going to use this micro tilt, so I can just go slightly over the end of it. It's not really a problem. So what I do is I'm just going to put it right there in the back, place it down on there. It's going to stay where I want it. Well, I just want to check something before I do any leveling. I just want to double check that it is in fact a 9.5 inch radius. Yeah. Okay. Alright, back together. So this will replicate the wooden one, duplicate what it was doing, or replace the wooden one, and then it will stay there, and the little bit of sticky, double-sided sticky tape will stop it falling out if and when Jonathan changes the neck on here. Okay, now I'm going to go up a step in the thingy. Okay, so that's now I'm just going to do this quickly by eye. What I'll do before I get stuck into tightening everything up and doing the action setting, why don't I take care of the nut and mark up the frets, which have some wear on them and evidence of leveling. Actually, the leveling has been fairly heavy down here. It could just be play wear. Sometimes it's hard to tell. They both end up or result in flattening, but we shall see. Okay, so just pull those out of the way for a minute. I'm going to do, this is where I should buy those string spreaders. It's always much more sensible to do that than what I'm about to do, because I end up having to pull it off and it's a pain. So we get that there like that. Will that hold it out of the way? Of course it won't, that will come back up. Any chance I could catch that? No, that ain't going to work. But maybe if I do this, it will. Oh yeah, you are clever. Something like that. So they are out of the way. I'm going to use my Sharpie thing. See what you can see. This was a difficult thing to have to zoom in on something like this and try and hold the thing where you can see it. Well, I need to see it, more importantly, and see what you can see. Right there, something like that. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to very carefully score along the bottom of the nut, which I've done, and then I'm going to cut down or cut up to break the poly seal, and do the same on the other side. Like doing this, I've got my what can you see? I've got the guitar is safely under my arm. Right. Now, hopefully, just stay there. When I give it a very gentle tap, it will cooperate with me and come out. Let us see. Just beginning to move. There we go. Curved base. So see, they've done the same thing. They've sprayed the nut into place. Curse them, they are something else. Fender. So we've got this crunchy bit now sticking up that we want to get rid of. I'm going to use a little bit of 1000 grit or some such to take it down. Otherwise it's inviting it to flake off, basically. It's a crunchy. You can feel as the stuff goes up the front. It's really quite something. What would the word be? Annoying. That's the word. Right. I'm just going to put a slightly higher grit on a moment. Oh, bear with me. If you ever have to do a refret of one of these Fender maple fingerboards that's been glued in this finished in this way, you'll get to know quite quickly why I curse it so. It's when you make a carpet that goes over the frets, it and then as soon as the factory puts that through the basically files the top of the fret off, you've then broken your single carpet into multiple pieces where each of the frets are, and so instead of one single continuous piece of finish, well, it's not quite the right way to describe it, but that's a bit better. Yeah, instead of no, it's not quite. It's never a single continual piece because it's always broken up by the what do you call it? The slots. But when it's done the proper way around, it's much simpler, and because it's flat, basically the sorry, I'm just getting a Dremel to get the nut ready. Yeah, when it's done what I consider the proper way, the starting point is a very flat surface, which is broken up by a series of slots, but the slots are, if you like, it just goes finish, slot, more finish, slot, more finish. When it's done this way, that they spray over the frets and then they break the layer, it goes finish, curls uphill like a carpet going up over the top of the fret, breaks on the way up, then there's the fret top, and then the carpet breaks on the way down. and those breaks are what cause it to flake away, because they, particularly when you remove the fret, it breaks more of the edge of that poly finish, so it just encourages the finish to disintegrate around that point. It's pretty useless, but I guess you don't really notice it until such times as if you're trying to do a refret, and then you suddenly realize that in the process of doing the refret, the original finish is coming off at a rate. Okay, so I've taken away the little single tab on the new tusk nut, and then ultimately this will sit in there like so. So we have a curved footing. Now I'm hoping that this is going to be tall enough, and that could be an annoying problem, but then I'll have to create a sort of a shim under there, which could be quite difficult. But the first thing I'm going to have to do with this is just thin it down a very small amount. So I'm going to, with some very light sandpaper, or some tired sandpaper, I'm just going to take a little bit of thickness away until it fits in here. And if I'm concerned or want to be absolutely sure that I'm reading it right, the thing to do is to get your digital thingies and have a little measurement down here away from where the finish is there. So we've got narrow, it's 285, so it is pretty narrow, and we've got 295, so we're 1/10 of a mil away, so that's okay. We've got the sanding stuff, as you can just see in the picture there, and I'm just going to try and work it down in a sort of even fashion. And when we get to the right amount, we should find that it slips into there just about right, but we're not quite there yet. So why do I use tusk? Because it has a really good performance in my experience, and it's a consistent material, and it won't ping when you install it. Now I'm going to have to just try and lean on this a little bit so we don't start developing a lean or a fatter top part than the bottom part. See, almost there. Now you can, if you're not sure about the way it's cutting, you can always go on the other side, but I sort of try to avoid going on the shorter side because that's where it's got the cute little tusk numbers. Right, almost there. Probably should get it to go in, hopefully without needing to glue it. That's the ideal scenario, is to get it just to stay comfortably in place. So as soon as I've got this slowly down to size, then when it's in place we'll check first of all to make sure it's tall enough. That's a little bit tight, and it suggests to me that it's widening up a bit towards the top, so I'll keep put a little bit of emphasis on the top edge. Well, as a non-religious person, I don't really have don't make any point of celebrating Easter in any particular way, and also I don't stop for Easter either, because it's another time, and I can enjoy working at Easter. There you go. Tiny little move along. A beautiful fit actually. All I need to know now that this is the correct height. But before I do that, I'm going to take the opportunity to mark up these frets prior to my leveling. So as I'm doing this on Easter Monday, I can feel as I go over this, I can feel the wear and tear on the frets. So that's part of the sort of experience of putting this pen, marker pen, on here. If you use marker pen on poly, and you should slip off with the end of the pen and run onto the poly, don't panic. As long as it's poly, you can use cellulose thinners to clean it away nicely. You can probably get most of it away with naphtha, which is safe to use on both poly and nitro, but it's probably quicker to get rid of it with a bit of nitrocellulose thinners, which Telegram told me the other day is in short supply, because apparently Russia has been buying nitrocellulose world supplies for the purpose of making ammunition, which of course they're entitled to do, whether I like them, what they're doing in Ukraine or not. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm now going to tighten up the strings for a minute. That's just about right. Be nice as a drop-in replacement for once. Yeah, I think we'll be alright. It's funny, sometimes it's not that common that a tusk nut can go straight in, but actually this may be the guitar that all the standard Strat tusk nuts for Strats are made for. See, there's a little bit, could do the tiny bit more taking down here, so I'm not going to do it from underneath. Doing a curved bottom is much harder than it looks, so I will sand the slots from the top down. It's not as pretty. I mean, you know, the file does slightly widen, which isn't a bad thing, but visually it's not quite as nifty and tidy. Now while I'm here, let us, it's a slotted screw, let us remove the oh, you can't, can you see this? You can maybe just see it. I'm just seeing what the nylon spacer is for this. See if we can replace it right now. Remove the thank you. Yeah. We'll take off the replacement one. I got these are a load of leftovers which would never be of the quality that I would ever put on something else unless it was a, you know, a really low quality giveaway sort of thing. But I mean, there's nothing terribly bad about them, but you know, I've got several sets of them kicking around, so here's a replacement if it works. Yes, look at that. That is a workable replacement, methinks. See him there? Ta-da! Where's the flat bit? Somewhere. There you go. Can do it all one-handed. And magnetic left-hand screwdriver. Come on, you can do it. Oh man, come on. It's pulling it all around the place because it's magnetic. Oi, oi, oi. Can I not hold on to something? Look, nearly there now. Nearly there, nearly. A bit more. Yeah, I mean it's not exactly the same one, but it's doing the same job, so I shall not worry too much about it. Right, let me just, I think I need my other hand. Hold on. Oh yeah. Right. Goodbye, spare piece. You are the weakest link. Goodbye. All right. So, what am I looking? Oh yes, I know what I'm looking to do. So let's tune this up right now. Point. I'll come back to the nut saddle, no, slots in a minute. So now we've got a very low action going on, so let me adjust these now to where we want. Let's call that 1.5. That's low. So I like to go from 1.5 all the way across to 1.25, 1.2, 1.25. So in order to do that, I end up with the same radius at the end. I probably shouldn't have done these up. Better if they were a little bit loose so I can get the height right first. With them a little bit slack. Okay, so now it's looking like the saddles are now standing up tall, which means all the little grub screws are nicely out of the way of our hands, our palm, which is how Jonathan had it before. What are we on? 1.5, we're down to 1.25. With you in a second. Right. Ping. Let's go backwards. 1.25. Too tall. Be with you any second now. Still a bit too tall. Okay, 1.25, that's good. Too tall. 1.25 and a tiny bit. Should be about right. And G, 1.25, a bit more. And then 1. Too low. Right, we've got too low now. We need 1.5 here. That's fractionally low. .5 in a minute. Sorry about this. It's boring and time consuming, but we'll get there. 1.5. .5. That's good. That's good, I think. Tiny bit down. That's good, that's good, that's good, that's good. Right. I'm pretty happy with that for the action. Okay, I'm just looking here. I think we're missing the ring. I thought something had gone on. Bear with me a second. Off comes the the knob again on this tuner. Unless I'm mistaken, I think we lost the... Have we got any on there? No, it's on the inside. It's on the inside. Ah, okay, so that's back to front. We didn't lose the ring, it's on the other side somehow. So put on the washer first, then the metal one, then the thing. Good. Caught my eye. Okay, so now I'm going to go through and check all such things as, I'll get this knob lined up, there we go. I'm going to go and check through and make sure that the relief is right, make a small adjustment to that if it can be adjusted, and then check the first and the last fret actions. And what I'll probably need to do then is make a small adjustment to the tuner, to the first fret, the slots. Okay. Well, there you go. That's one of the strings gone. Now I have to find another string. Let's get this the right way. Right, that's good. But I need another string now. Well, I don't technically have one, so I'm going to have to find one from somewhere. Nope. That's always an annoying bit. Probably have to sacrifice a set of 10s for it. Might have some spares at home, but not here. Find these. Oh yeah. Well, I've got quite a few knocking about. I guess I'll just have to take one from another pack. These were gifted to me by Adam anyway, so I shouldn't complain too much. So bear with me while I fit the string. Okay. Spares. I like to try and have a set of a box of odds and sods spare strings, but I'm afraid I haven't got any at the moment, so that'll serve me right. Okay. Okay, sorry, hit the mic. So we have relief again. That's pretty flat actually. I'm going to leave that where it is. So relief is okay. Let's check the first fret actions now. And I like 0.3 over the first frets, I do. Okay, slightly over, so there is now scope for making those adjustments. So let's do that bit now. Over here. So these Hosco nut files, they are a different shape to the Japanese files. That is scraping that. They are a different shape to the Japanese Hiroshima files that I started out using. But the Hiroshima files tended to cut. They didn't have this widening edge, which is prettier, but actually it was not a very good design, because as you cut down, no matter how careful you were, you got either I don't know how to describe it. Either the slot got slightly curvy as it went through the nut, in which case it grabbed your string anyway, no matter how you cut it, or it just didn't. It's something about that sort of vertical thin slot, only as thin as the string, really didn't work very well. So this is kind of right on the mark there. This, because it cuts in a slightly V-shaped, I discovered ages back that the V-shape is a really good shape for doing these slots. What you don't want is a huge deep thing. So we're just doing a tiny adjustment. But the V shape is very good because it allows make sure that the string doesn't catch in the slot, because the slot is opening up as you go up. So it really helps to not catch the string. So very nearly, so only tiny amounts needed here. The secret with these Hosco files is to get used to exactly how much to get where you want to get to, and it is easy to overcut, which can be a very depressingly expensive undertaking when you have to start again or find another nut and begin again. So you also, like any standard rule for doing a nut, if you have to cut backwards, you need to make sure there's a backwards leaning slot, but you have to do it without cutting into the, well, if you can, you have to do it without cutting into the iPhone storage fault. Are you kidding me? Oh no. This is no good. Sorry, hold on. Let's try again. Sorry, ran out of memory. I don't know what I can do to sort this blasted phone out. I need more memory. We might conk out again in a minute, so I'm going to go as far as we can. Right, where was I? I think I was on the high E, wasn't I? You may have missed, probably have missed the adjustment I made with all the other strings, but I'm just doing a tiny tweak on the first fret action, and that is almost there. Yeah, sorry about this, stupid phone. It's got iPhones, they're just awful. They have this kind of thing where they use up a bunch of memory and hidden files. The iMac, or the Mac does the same thing, calls it hidden files, and you can't do a damn thing about it. Right, those are the first ones. Now we're doing the downside. So let's go. call that one on the mark already. That's on the ball too. That's a fraction high. Let's do it. Do you know what I watched yesterday for the first time in a million years? Was the Young Ones. And I don't mean Cliff Richard. I mean the comic strip actors from the British comedy crew of the early 80s. My goodness. Was it dated? Or was it dated? I think I'm going to call that quits. Yeah, it was very dated, but it was quite funny. I think the impression I got was I just was aware of myself having been at that age, you know, watching it in the, you know, with a watching it as a consumer of it when I was young, and my art was an open book, and I used to say, "Live and let die," did it, yeah. It was very, very funny when you see something, and especially if you think the last time I saw this was when I was, you know, first time around that age, which I was probably in my 20s, 1982, something like that. 19, blimey, 19 years old, and they had Motorhead playing Ace of Spades as this sort of musical guest that just appeared, and they had Emma Thompson was in it, Stephen Fry, Hugh Laurie. It was the episode where they go they go on University Challenge with Bambi Gascoigne, not Bamba Gascoigne, but Bambi. Anyway, and they're up against Footlights College, Cambridge or something, with Stephen Fry, Hugh Laurie, and Ben Elton as the toffs, and Emma Thompson. So, diagnostically speaking, low spot up here, a low one right at the end, lower there, but it's clear that some of these have been done before, or at least worn flat, but they don't seem to wear flat. They seem to wear with notches more than flat. But the main thing is I want to make sure, as long as all the notes play and then in turn all the bends play, we'll be happy. A tiny little hint of something up at this top end that I would wish to address. Okay. Yes. What do they call themselves? Scumbag College? Oh, no, Footlights Cambridge Scumbag College. And Griff Rhys-Jones was Bamba Gascoigne, or Bambi. He did quite a convincing job of it, actually. And Mel Smith was the doorman, or the guard, security guard, at the television studios where they were filming the University Challenge episode. Anyway, funny to cast my mind back to a time when I think I can remember looking forward to it, you know, actually wanted it to come on the TV. High spots here and definitely here. So, and it has been, I would say it's been leveled before, judging by how flat these appear, relatively speaking, straight from the, you know, from the get-go, without even really doing much leveling at all. Okay, so we are choking out on 17 high E17, high E17, just going to write that down for a minute, high E17 bend, choking out on the 18th. Now this is the fun part, as we recalibrate for the G track, as I call it, and the G track is where you run into the choke out. So if there's any unevenness in the G track, it's going to cut off those high E bends. So the idea is now we just want to calibrate, or check the calibration. As it happens, it's still on correctly, and then we're going to level out the G track, and the aim will be to be able to bend that note up at this chosen low action. So what I like about this method is, I've said a million times before, that in the past when we were young and foolish, the action we had on our guitars was the action that the frets allowed us to have. So, you know, the shop and you as the young eager guitarist would you'd basically set the action as low as it could go before it started buzzing, and then you'd sort of back off, and that would be it. Low spot there. 17. See, cleared. Still just a little zzz, but at least the note has cleared up, you see. It's free. Free. So that's the beauty of this method. You can actually hear what's being freed up. So I'm going to just concentrate a little bit on this end where there's a low spot. These frets have been hit before, so I don't quite know by whom and how much. Well, I can see how much. These are flattened quite a lot. Not, as I say, it won't be so much that it doesn't play, but it's been hit quite hard. There, particular in that one. Ouch. Okay, that's freed those notes up, which is great. That's what this is all about. Now, coming down to the heavier end of the strings, the wound strings move more than the plain strings, so it's normal that as when we have a low action, as we come across to this part of the neck where the wound strings are, it's quite common that we find that on a low action the wound strings will clatter a little bit against the frets, and I call it fret slap. And it's the reason I make a distinction between that and fret buzz is that fret slap can be alleviated by this tool, because in a sense what it's doing is mapping the curve of this tool onto an uneven, imperfect curve of the fretboard, and in doing so the tool sort of just clips off the tops of the peaks of the hills which get in the way of the frets, so you get a little bit extra room and you get back those notes without any buzz, or slap I should say. So there's a little bit of slap around on the low E, but so far it's going well. So we aim to clear that up too. And so all that happens is I don't really change what I'm doing, as I continue to calibrate this tool, which makes, relatively speaking, this rod is a smooth curve once I've calibrated it, and that smooth curve is laid over the top of this imperfect curve, aka the fingerboard, and we gently kind of rub the more perfect curve onto the imperfect curve, and it only moves about, at most, about a 3/4 of an inch front to back, but that seems to be enough to retain the general map of the original curve, and it just sort of rubs down the top of those high spots. Now of course when you do this you can introduce a little bit of pressure with your hands at the same time, which will push the bar down a bit more, and how much you do or don't do that tends to be quite experience based, a bit more instinctive than, it's not something you can really dictate. A lot of this is feel. Not bad. Okay, finally for the low E, and now, as I said, I'm thinking purely about fret slap now. I want to calibrate as accurately as I can to the curve, the underlying curve on this neck, and I want my thingy, truss rod, banana as I call it, to make a more perfect version of that curve, but sampled at these 3 points. And so because it fills in and makes a curve between those 3 points, the curve on this is more perfect or smoother than the curve on the actual neck, which due to the compression is a bit bumpy, even on good quality necks like this Fender. The only neck I've ever found that didn't have any at all was a carbon fibre one. So it's true that compression adds some kind of crumple to the neck, and it just slightly ruffles the frets up in after a fashion. So now I'm thinking about mapping the curve of this onto that. I can see a high spot right there. See where it's kind of making more dust. It gives you a clue. And that high spot is a cluster of frets, like I would call it a hilltop in that topography of the neck. But if I clip off the tops of that hill, this string can move without so much rattle. A little tiny bit in the middle there, so I'm going to do a little bit more focused on fret 9, 7 to 9, and we will be pretty much done after that. So when I say focused, what do I mean? Well, I'm just sort of pressing down a little bit more there compared to anywhere else. So I just want to tame that little hilltop in this overall topography of the neck. There we go. And that instinctively is it. That's all I'm going to do. Now I can feel that the front edge of this nut, or the corner of this nut, is a bit sharp, so once I've got the strings off I must remember to just file that down a little bit. Okay, so are we still running? God, we're still running. I managed to delete enough to keep running. Wow. Right, time to get rid of these. Thank you. I really ought to keep this set because I may need to reuse them for sacrificial strings for the next time I break a high E, wouldn't you say? Okay, so let's check through. I have replaced the nylon bush, or washer I should say, so that's good. I have replaced the nut with a tusk one. We're going to go through in a little bit and set the bridge so that it is down only, but with the lightest possible touch. So what I'm going to do, this is so boring, I'm going to straighten out these strings so I can reuse them as sacrificial strings. So it takes a couple of seconds or minutes probably to bend them straight so I can get them all out of the bridge plate, tremolo bridge, the block, without getting them all tangled up in one big mess. Well, I seem to be making big YouTube money this month. I have no idea why exactly, but I think I've increased my earnings this month by about 50 bucks on last month, so 50 US up, which means I'm probably roaring towards a bumper payout of 200 quid. Actually, not 50 bucks, it's 50 pounds. No, what am I? No, it's not, it's $50. $200, so that's what I'm racing towards as an all-time, it's not all-time greatest, but I think I've had one higher than that, or two, but yeah, so it's interesting to try and work out, so what is it? And I'm not really, I haven't got the time to dedicate to studying all the, and I don't want to play the game, to be fair. I've probably said before, but I see enough people on a daily basis who are built up their businesses hugely dependent on ad revenue and in turn on subscribers and likes and keeping people happy and coming back and sort of actively engaged and all the rest of it. And fair play when they do all of that stuff. It's tiring, it looks pretty exhausting to me, but some of them seem to make enough money to pay all their bills and pay for the car payments and whatever else they have to do. So I guess at some level you get to a point, if you have enough followers, it follows that you have enough a decent earnings to have a decent lifestyle. And I've never wanted to be in that position, or even attempt to be in that position, because for me, I hate the whole thing of being at the mercy of YouTube's or Google's algorithms, YouTube's algorithm, where they can take offense at something you said or did, or think you said and did, and before you know what's happened, you've had your entire earnings shut down, and maybe you can never get them back or whatever, or maybe you can, but you can't pay your mortgage until you can, or whatever. It's not, I never wanted to be in that position at all. So it was my kind of promise to myself at the beginning that I would never aim. You're still playing? You're still playing. I would never aim to be dependent on Google earnings, and I haven't. And I've always, if I've earned anything from Google, it's been just a bonus, really. I'm grateful, for which I'm grateful, but only a bonus. Now I've got an option here. If I'm afraid of this this finish, what I could do is I could cut back here and not depend on going around and tagging it to the back of here, so it may not stay on quite so well, but it may save me from losing, if it happened to be one of these USA Strats with the weakened or the adhesion problems, So what I'll do is I'll put the tape on, I'll get it all covered up, and then I'll go back and just trim down the edge. The only other way, if you were worried, if I was worried about a type of some finish on the guitar that was clearly ropey, then what I might do is, the only other thing you could do is get a fret protector strip and try and do each fret on its own, but it would have to be a completely different polishing process, and I don't think it would be anywhere near as thorough, because it would just take far too long to go through 15 different grades of paper, which I currently do if I was doing it with one fret at a time. The only reason it works is to go through all of these frets in a line, hence the masking tape approach. But anyway, so YouTube. What was I saying about YouTube? I was looking at the thing and trying to. Although, like I said, I don't really follow it. I don't follow it avidly. I'm not that interested enough to put the time in, and some people who do make a living out of doing YouTube for views and that kind of revenue, might look at me and think I'm crazy. I'm not capitalizing my subscriber base the way they would, or they are, and so they kind of think I'm wasting an opportunity. But like I say, I've been very clear from the outset what I wanted YouTube to do, and it's done that and is doing that. So, and that naivety or foolishness, depending on your view, it buys me out of having to worry about chasing popularity or performing 24 hours a day. And I follow a guy called the Russian dude, who, like a few people I follow who used to be investors, or used to run an investing podcast, but then when the war with Ukraine started up, they seemed to switch, or they got more views from updating what they knew about the Russian invasion, because this guy was Russian, of course. And anyway, his channel became about that, and he's currently suffering because he's built up his channel to be a numbers thing, popularity, and Google has, or YouTube has decided that, because he talks about war, they don't like his content, so they've put a block on it, or they've massively restricted it and demonetized it and stuff. So he's really freaked out, because all of a sudden his earnings have kind of stopped. But in a way, it gets quite undignified at that point, because suddenly he's got no choice but to start begging his supporters to, directly support him on Patreon or something like that. And I would hate to be in that position. I don't for 1 minute think it's appropriate to ask people to pay for what I'm doing here, through Patreon or donations, or beer donations or whatever. And again, some people say, well, that's stupid, you're making content, you should blah blah blah. And of course the reason I don't is because in my head I'm making content for a different reason, and it's already delivered. That's pretty much it. It's already delivered what I wanted back. My my return on investment is already good, and that was to these videos. I wanted them to bring me a steady, not hysterical, but a steady, solid flow of qualified, interested customers, or prospects, you might say. Anyway, it's done that. So I kind of feel like asking people to pay again for this content is, I don't know, it just doesn't feel right to me. And call me stupid, call me struggling, I can't even afford to buy a new car and all that stuff, but whatever you call me, it feels right to me not to charge for it. And I guess you have to do what feels right, right? Right. And I feel grateful that it does what I wanted it to do for the effort I've put in. And so anyway, that's why I don't look too closely into all the technical stuff behind the scenes to try and figure stuff out, or why it does this and doesn't do that. So, but it did seem to me that when I looked at the slight increase in ad revenue, based on, I guess it was, more viewer figures or longer time spent on a video or whatever its metrics are, and I realised that there was a fair bit of comments on my videos. There are a fair few comments on my videos, and also that I do comment back, and I kind of do it because I'm interested most of the time, not because I feel like I must or I'm obliged to, but I do think it's nice to reply to somebody, but also I do it when I get the time and when I'm interested. So, but I think what it goes to show is that it goes without saying, it's obvious really, but having activity seems to count for quite a lot, and I do see a fair lot of other people who have Facebook pages and YouTube channels, and some of them don't have as much activity. Some have tons more and followers and so on. That's fine, but I think having a kind of sense of conversation going on really counts for quite a bit in both Facebook and YouTube. I am going to push these down and stick them down here on this last bit, because otherwise I'm not going to get them to stay on. Nearly there. Anyway, so I think that probably explains why I got a bit more earnings, because I've probably engaged with people, and I've obviously posted some stuff that people wanted to engage with a bit more. So I suppose the only, when people look at something and think, right, what do I need to do more of? And I guess my learning is that all I will do more of is keeping a conversation going as much as possible, because it seems to be productive. Okay, so that's the neck masked off. Now I've got to do two things. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do the recrowning of the frets, and then after that I'm going to do the polishing and sanding, or sanding and polishing of the frets. So, how are you doing, memory? Oh, you're doing good, memory wise. So I'm going to now I'm going to paint the frets with this stuff again, and then recrown. And the marker pen is really handy because it keeps me informed of how much rounding off of the fret I'm doing and how much I have to do. And the aim is to round off the frets, but leave the thinnest possible line of pen down the center of the fret, because if I do that, it's a visual reminder that I haven't touched the top of the fret with this tool. And so long as I haven't touched the top of the fret with the tool, it means I haven't lowered it any. And if I haven't lowered it, then it's going to retain its relative height that I've just achieved through the fret leveling process. And so that means I will have reshaped the fret after leveling it, which we want to do, and then I will have done so without reducing the height of the fret at all. Now this fret, well, these ones that have been lowered before show up pretty quickly, and they show a big, when I run the file over them, they show a big heavy black line down the middle, and I have to sort of roll the file over until I can get it thinned out as much as possible. So in a minute, what I also have to do is tear up and prepare a load of grades of sandpaper. I normally have some pinned up on the wall, magnetically held on the wall, but I don't have any at the moment, so I have to make some new fresh stuff. Okay, come this way. Yeah, there's a lot of wear. Some of it's kind of chord or indentations, and some of it is just flatness. So I think it's been played a lot and enjoyed, but also I think it's been levelled by someone. I would hazard a guess at that. One of the things I found out the other day, by the way, I don't know if you happened to see the video I did on the Alvarez, James's little parlour guitar the other day. Now this one's really wide. That is a heavily flattened fret. I don't know, let's see if you can see this. Look at all of that. Look at how much flatness there's there to be taken off. Have to work it down centre, thinning out that black line as much as is possible. I can see it also breaking off some of the finish that was along the side of the fret as well. Yeah, James's Alvarez. It was an enjoyable little guitar to set up because I rescued it from sort of unplayability to a reasonably decent playing level. But it, it clearly took the last bit of adjustable saddle room to do it, and thankfully a very big plus to Alvarez in one sense that their design of bridge had a sort of step down between the saddle on one height and then about 5 or 6 mils below that the pegs on the lower part of the bridge, and that simple design made a substantial or relatively substantial action adjustment possible, and that alone really gave James back a new kind of few years of life on that guitar. Now I had thought, because it looked to me like it came to me like a guitar that was fairly tired, it had been adjusted down before and it was near the end of its adjustment scope. And to my absolute surprise, he told me it was bought new, which kind of just was horrifying. And it was in the same basic condition, as when he got it new. And he was busy with work, and things conspired to not take it back to the retailer and say, look, this isn't very good. And anyway, time moved on, and I think his kind of idea was just one of these days I'll get it set up and that will all be fine. But to see, and let's assume that it wasn't quite as deformed as that when he first got it, but to have the first adjustment, really, I mean, what he did say very clearly, that it felt unplayable from the outset, which for a brand new guitar to feel unplayable, it's a disgrace, really. And how could you be putting that stuff out the factory door, let alone out the retailer's door? I mean, just shocking. And anyway, I just was happy that I was able to make it playable. Thank goodness. Oh, anyway, but yeah, to learn that it was in fact pretty much like that from new was just astonishing. Okay. So, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put some tape, over the front edges here, just to protect the paintwork for when I go crazy with a sanding paper, just to protect this edge. and just to cover up this bit here, and then I will do me the business of making some small bits of sandpaper. Now, people sometimes say to me, they say, Sammy, aren't you afraid of your fret dust going into your pickups and sticking to them magnetically? And I say, no, I ain't. And I ain't because fret dust ain't magnetic, which I think some people just simply don't want to believe. But I can tell you, my dear friends, that fret metal is not magnetic. And I can tell you that, regular nickel steel, nickel silver as we call it, is definitely not magnetic. The only one that is vaguely hint of magnetism is Evo Gold, and that was just by chance, really. I found that out. It actually reacted very, very slightly in its raw wire form to a very, very strong magnet, but nickel silver, not a murmur, and the Evo Gold only moved a tiny amount with the strongest magnet. So to all intents and purposes, regular fret wire, not at all magnetic, so isn't attracted to the pickup poles in any way, shape or form. So there is no chance at all of the dust from sanding these frets sticking to the pickups. I mean, it will cover the top of the thing and we'll dust it off and clean it all up, but it's certainly not doesn't have any risk of it magnetically sticking to the pickups or anything like that. That's not the case for wire wool, which is a ferrous stuff, and so therefore it really will stick to your pickups like iron filings does. And the worry about wire wool fragments or dust is that it will rust, and in rusting it will either rust or it will, if it doesn't rust, it will short circuit or do some otherwise unpleasant things to your precious pickups, and that has a ring of credibility to it, which I take seriously. But the fret dust, no danger at all. Right, since we're still running, thank goodness, 40 minutes I managed to restore. I'm going to get going, but while I've got the tape on here, let me just get my little file and let me just slightly round off the edge of this nut, so it's not quite so sharp as it was. Oops. And run it along the front edge as well, and then on the back edge, so it's a safe rounded edge on the file there, which is good. Right, so sanding time. So the first bit of sanding I like to do by hand to see what I've got, and I can see that you can probably see the little black spots of marker pen, which really clearly tell you where the pits in the frets are. Now you might wonder why, having done fret leveling, why didn't I carry on and get rid of all of those little divots? And the reason is because it's cosmetic more than anything. It really doesn't interfere with play significantly, and I will tend not to trade those cosmetic marks for all important fret metal, since fret metal is the life blood of your frets. I'm not going to make that exchange unless a customer very specifically asks me to. This is why I'm not so keen on not having tape gripping the sides, because it really wants to come off easier. So anyway, my first one I like to do by hand, as I've said, so I can sort of feel all the frets and get a look at them, and I can kind of run the paper over the edges, soften them and round them off a little bit. And I can also feel and see the little flakes of poly coming off the sides of the frets. Okay, then I switch over to a little gnarly, currently a gnarly piece of foam. I do need a better block of foam to kind of take over doing it more like this, and that gets more up and over the sides of the frets. So what I'm seeing at the moment is, out of all of those little bits of little what do you call them, craters or grooves, I am seeing that only one has remained after this initial 400 grit sanding. So that's kind of good, because it will feel or look like almost all of it has been eradicated. And actually, by the time we get down to all of the grades of paper, even that last one may be barely visible. So it'll feel and look mostly like we got rid of all of that wear, which is often the case. So some of it will be taken away by fret leveling, and some of it will be just eased off with this progressively lighter sandpaper. Tired. Well, it's a bit later today than normal because, and there's a reason why. It's because it's a bank holiday Monday, in part, but also I think because we were very lazy and didn't really get up till about 11 or 12 o'clock today. And so by the time, we got round to this evening, everything was running late, and of course the clocks having gone forward or backwards or upside down or something, it's made it a little bit difficult to stick to normal times. So I've been running a bit late at the workshop. Been having some great fun with finally getting stuck into my cherry, what I call the cherry jazz mother. And the reason it's called that is because it's made out of cherry, and it's made from a piece of wood that my mum bought me last year. She, I think, forgive me if you've heard me say this, but she's not been well, and she has stage 4 cancer, and she wanted to buy me a gift to remember her by, and or give me a gift, and there wasn't anything I wanted, and she said, no, come on, think of something. And I said, I know, if you buy me a piece of wood, I will make a guitar out of it, and then I will definitely always remember you with this guitar. And so she liked the sound of that and bought me, or I picked out a piece of cherry with a nice grain on it, and she bought it for me, and I immediately sort of set about planning a guitar that I wanted to make with it, and it ended up being a 3 P90 device, like a Strat with 3 P90s partly because I once had one that I really missed because I sold it, and also I don't have an offset guitar, and I don't have anything with P90s, I don't think. So I decided an offset shape with P90s, 3 P90s, and then for the kind of second half of the year I planned it out, and what I did do is I sort of upcycled a neck ready, and it was an Indian Encore Strat neck which I re-radiused, and I fretted with probably what turned out to be the last of the Evo gold wire that I could acquire anywhere in this country. So that sort of sat in a hanger on the wall on its own, that neck, and I sort of went through a few reiterations of the guitar. I was going to have, first of all, I was going to have a tom bridge and a Les trem, Duesenberg Les trem, and then I didn't really like the idea because I didn't really want, for some reason I didn't want to cut a big angle into the pocket and shove this Strat style neck, into a Les Paul sort of angle to meet what had to be a high bridge, because A, it was a tom bridge, and B, to work with the Les trem, the bridge has to be quite high, relatively high, to work well. So the kind of constraints of that I didn't like, and then for a bit I thought, I'll tell you what, I bought myself a nice Wilkinson tremolo bridge, and I thought I'll do it as a good old-fashioned tremolo bridge, because I love those Wilkinson bridges. So I set about designing that, but because I had chosen stacked P90s for the hum cancelling properties, they're much deeper than a regular P90, and so with a zero angle neck, that meant the cavities had to be pretty deep, and because they were that deep for the 0 degree neck body join, I should say, it actually meant that I couldn't really get the tremolo route, the rear tremolo route, out of the remaining timber, out of a 44mm maximum depth of the body at the center point. So it all started to look a bit impossible. So in the end I thought, look, I want to make this thing much more than I want to stand around worrying or rethinking it every 5 seconds. So what I did was I just decided I'm going to go hardtail and just get it made, and I'll show you what I've got. But so I've made the body, and I've done it in a way that was inspired by Andrew's Indonesian Firebird, which had some really, not as extreme as this, but it had some really nice drop downs. So his guitar was kind of like a one piece, but it wasn't a one piece, but it didn't have like a cut down there and the wings stuck on. They were, from the center out to here was one piece and another piece. And I really liked that step down, so I've built it into this one, with the result that the whole rest of it is really thin, relatively thin, 30 mils. But it feels great, it's really light, and I've put some contours on it this evening. A little bit of a forearm slope and a little bit of a belly carve. And I'm going to continue carving those a bit at home and sanding around all these edges. But it's with the neck on, with its 2 bolts, it feels lovely. It's light and it's a big area, but it sits very nicely. So I'm really pleased with how it's coming on. So that's going back home to be sanded further tomorrow in the daytime, and then eventually, once I've got everything sorted out, smooth and sanded back, what I'll do is I'll wait then for, or will be waiting for, a nice low humidity day, and that and a few other things are going to get into the spraying zone, and it's going to get, well, it will get oiled, stained and oiled at home first. And I'm currently just thinking about what kind of whether I'll do any stain to pick out the grain or whether I'll let the oil do that. I like doing oil followed by satin nitro. It seems to me when it's become a favourite finish for my own stuff. It's very workable and forgiving a finish, but it, you know, the oil picks out the grain beautifully, and then so long as you let the oil cure fully, the nitro goes on top of that beautifully. So help! I've caught my sleeve on there, which is now going to catch on every damn thing else unless I can snip it off, which I can't really do. Yeah, so this is an example of true oil first and satin nitro on top, and it's a lovely finish. True oil, satin nitro. Gorgeous! Anyway, so that's what I think I'm going to do for the Cherry Jazz Mother, as I like to call it. Okay. So here we go. Let's try and release these little bits of tape. Not easy to do, so I think I'll just run down with the thumb like this and get it rolling first, and then we'll come back and pull all the bits off. Okay, so we should be on course now for stringing up, or give it a clean down first, get rid of all the remaining dust and so on, and then we'll fit new strings, set the tremolo at its lightest point possible without it tilting up or being unstable, and then we'll stretch out the strings so it's got the best possible tuning stability, and yeah, that'll be pretty much that. Hurrah! Okay. Now what do I need? Oh yes, I need a cloth. A fairly bright coloured one, not too dirty. Fine, I need some of this juice. So at this point I want to basically lift out all the pen and dust from the fretboard as quickly as I can, so none of it hangs around and comes off on Jonathan's fingers at a later date. Should be actually fine, nicely cleaned up. I think we'll have taken most of the remaining poly that was originally climbing up the frets. I think most of that will be gone, if not all of it. And yeah, looking good. So a light clean around everything else. This is Coleman's cooking fuel, which is naphtha. And naphtha is a petroleum ether, but it has a very inert, benign, harmless formulation. In other words, it doesn't damage polyurethane finishes, and it also doesn't affect nitrocellulose either, so you can use it safely on both. I would be cautious on vintage 1950s paints of unknown provenance, because who knows what that's susceptible to, and it could well be. I remember being shocked once in the past when I used some naphtha on an old guitar, and everything was absolutely fine except for the vintage knobs, the paint, the greeny gold paint on the numbers on the knob started to come off. So whatever that substance was, it didn't like any kind of stuff touching it. So I couldn't safely say that naphtha was secure for that particular substance. But who knows what the substance was? I don't. Okay, so we are pretty good to go. Everything good, everything good. All cleaned up. All cleaned up. Right, let's put some tans on. How are we doing time-wise? Well, we're doing, somehow or other. So the nice thing about this whole setup method is that by the time we get here, everything's done really. Well, the precision stuff is done. The neck is, the frets are as level as we can make them, as they're going to ever be. And the nut is set up for the action that we've chosen, and the relief is set. So really all we have to do now is this sort of enjoyable bit of stringing up, locking off the strings and doing some stretching and intonating, getting the final touches really. So I've got the Cherry Jazz Mother to finish, which I'm looking forward to, and actually I'm kind of as much looking forward to the slow home sanding part, where it goes from being something that I cut with a you know, a router and some files, to something that gets sanded smoother and smoother and smoother, which is a really nice transformation. And then that point of oiling it, and it's really on its way. I already know that the neck and the body now fit together perfectly, which is great, and so it's, you know, it's yeah, it's all on in the right direction. But I've got that one, and I've got Trekkie, that little one I just showed you there, to do as well, to finish, and that just needs the electrics and pickups and the electrics putting in place, which is again all the sort of geometry and the setup part of it is done. So it's just an enjoyable bit to sort of do the electrics side of things. Kind of scary in a way, because you've done all that stuff, and I thought it through right. So here's how I put on the what's-its, the strings come up to the post. On this kind of guitar, I pull all the way through, make sure that the ball is up in the top of the block, pull it taut, and then I grab hold of the first string at the first fret, and I pull it back one fret, and then I start winding, and I hold this string that I've got in my hand, and I pull it so it locks over the top of the loose string, and as it comes round I push it under this time round and hold it under, and then once that gets out of the way, we've got the string nicely locked off, and then I can cut off the leftover string, get that neatly out of the way. So, and we do that all the way through. Make sure it's up inside the block, tighten it, hold it on the first fret, pull back a fret, start winding, direct the held string over the loose string first, and then second time the loose string comes round, make sure the held string goes underneath it, and those two coils sort of lock the string in between, and it looks very tidy. As you get to the plain strings, that one fret's worth will translate into slightly more than one wrap above and one wrap below. So you could try and judge it to 3/4, but it's probably better to just add a bit more winding than it is to risk not having enough. Get up, get on up. Get under there and cut. So tuning stability comes down to two things. Not your tuners. Shock horror. That can be a big surprise to some people. In fact, it's almost impossible to get your tuners to unwind or shed tension. The only time you can do it, in my experience, is if you haven't put enough winds on the plain strings, and they can actually slide backwards and uncoil, but that's just a friction issue on this kind of post anyway. But in general terms, even your cheap Chinese tuners, the gearing can't go anywhere. It'll work perfectly. So what causes your guitar to go out of tune if it's not the tuners? Well, the first thing is it's your, I look at it this way, I consider it to be 50% your nut and 50% unreleased slack in your strings. And if you take care of both of those things, you will have pretty perfect tuning stability when you play. The guitar will go into tune very easily, and it will stay in tune, and it will just feel like it's cooperating with you, and it will make you want to reach for it because it's such a trouble-free tuning experience, which you know, is no small thing when you really stop and think about what musicians want. First and foremost, it isn't even a good looking guitar with the top pickups. It's a guitar that stays in tune. That's if you're a musician. If you're a rock star who just likes jumping around the stage and don't care too much about the thing being in tune or not, then it won't matter so much. But for most of us, when we get older and more serious or more experienced, it tends to turn out that what we care about is a guitar that's in tune and stays in tune. So if you remember, it's 50% your nut, and that means getting a good quality nut that doesn't store up any friction, no pings and so on, and that the strings can run smoothly through, but also has the correct first fret action. Which is why I use Tusk. Yeah, that's why I use Tusk. So we've got friction-free slots. The first fret action is perfect. It took a lot of time to get it right, and so there's no as little friction as possible. Strings aren't getting stuck in the slots or anything. That's 50% done, and then the other 50% is what I'm doing now, which is stretching the strings physically. And what will happen is they'll obviously detune as you stretch them, and most people think they stretch them a bit and then they go off and play, and that's that, and then they blame their guitars for not staying in tune. And in fact, all that's really happening is there's still slack waiting to be released from the strings. So that test tells you you haven't got all the slack out of the strings yet. Now, sometimes that's hard to know that if you haven't done the nut part, and you'll never know whether it's the nut that's putting you out of tune or the strings with slack. So that's why it's really critical to get the nut right. If you get the nut right, then you can trust what you're hearing with this detuning business. So that has tuned it back up, and now we'll go about stretching again. And I would recommend that you are disciplined enough to stretch it until you really don't hear any more detuning. In fact, sometimes weirdly what you find is when you hit that point, and you stretch, you find the actual note goes sharp. Don't ask me how it does, but it feels like, oh, it does. And then you've reached the point. And what you'll get repaid with, providing you've done the nut and the slack, is you will suddenly have a guitar that you just never again have a feeling of it fighting you to go in and stay in tune. And it's only when you had one that doesn't fight you like that will you realize what a joy it is. Not far off. Of course, the wound strings will hold a bit more slack than the plain ones. Right, so I'm going to just give it a couple more little stretches. We are nearly there. Okay, lovely. Now, let us put in the tremolo arm. Now what we want to do is I want to just undo this a little bit until we see the first movement away from the deck of, of the block, the plate I should say. As soon as it moves up, as soon as we can hear it, and also when we've got it just at the point where it's trying to lift up, what we find is if we bend a note we'll hear this one go flat. So that's a bit too loose. We don't want a bend to make that one, the low E or any open string, go flat. So I think that's still going a little bit as we do it. Lovely. Now I'm going to do something I never do. I'm going to plug in this thing with this thing and risk plugging the two in together somehow. Have I got enough wires? Have I got any spare wires? I think I have. This is too noisy. What am I going to do? Okay, real. I've got a spare wire here. It's got Donna written on it. Hello, Donna. Hasn't been used, I think, ever. So. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this into there and out to there. What a fluty, tooty sound. It's got a lovely fluty neck pickup sound. Let's have some reverb, just because. Sorry, I haven't used that amp for a long time, so I don't know what the settings are on there. Clean, intro clean, crunch, twin swing, clean chorus with a bit of background. Ooh. Okay, we'll keep it running, why not? So, we are talking intonation. So, looking flat. Flat as well. So based on the first two, this little thingy wants to go that way, and then we'll adjust everything else in turn. But everything else should be just about right from there. I don't like the sound, sorry about the hissing amp. We're good. Okay, I'm good, I'm happy, everything's good. Fingernails are too long. I haven't cut them back. Need to cut them back. Too much noise in that setting, but anyway, it served its purpose just to intonate. So just a little bit out on the first three more than anything else there. And we are Oh God, how do you get this out? It really is hard. Okay, so that's it. Everything's good. We are done. That's not needed anymore. That can be saved for another day, another $1. We are good. We are good. There's the original nut that can go back with it as well on a bit of sticky green froggy tape in case it never needs to be put back to original. And that's it. We're done. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. We actually got through with enough room. God knows how that happened, because that's another 1 hour 20 minutes. So there we are, Corona. Overall verdict, beautiful and everything. I mean, my amp settings are terrible, so it sounds really brittle and whatever. But my thoughts about the frets is just they've been leveled sometime before, and actually, Jonathan, if you say they haven't, then they're in fairly shocking condition because they've been hit hard somewhere along the production thing. But anyway, we've got it as low as it will play, a 1.5 across to 1.25. That's a safe bet. So we'll get it in its box now and away, and see you for the Telecaster on Wednesday. And for the Telecaster, I've been sourcing a replacement bridge saddle for one of them, but actually it hasn't been misbehaving for me, so whether it needs it or not is anyone's guess. Thanks for watching. Really love guitars. See you again soon.